hello everybody, and welcome to the Curious Realm's continuing coverage of the second annual Dogman and Cryptid conference here in White Settlement, Texas, being put on by our good friends Paranormal Round Table out of, well, the Cedar Park area, just with us. We have in this segment our good friend Ryan Edwards. He is the author of Cryptids of the World, a great compendium of cryptids from, well, all over the world. Welcome back to the show, bud.
Of course, it's good to be here.
Absolutely. I always love having you on. You have such a great grasp of the actual science and the concept of being able to look at folklore and everything else with an open mind and use that as a means by which to examine the science that we have on hand.
Yes. Like, what I really see with cryptozoology is it has ology in the name. It's a science. How can we get it from being the whole telling stories and the whole speculation and the whole, okay, there's monsters in the woods.
Yeah.
No, let's break that down. Okay, there's things in the woods that we don't know. How can we study these creatures? How can we discover these creatures, hopefully one day? So it's my job. I really see it as a science, and how can we break down the science of cryptozoology itself?
Well, yeah, precisely, because so it is a science. People often forget the fact that, no, we have to study the anthropology behind things. And that is a lot of what the cryptozoology is looking at mysterious, strange animals that have been talked about for years and years. So, folks like Adam Davies, whenever we've had him on, he's like, yes, folklore and the local stories is where I start.
Yes.
That is where the investigation begins, no different than with MUFON, it begins with a witness statement.
Yes.
Did you see something? Not like, my mom told me she saw something. Okay, well, that's secondhand knowledge. So even kind of the same way in the Bigfoot and cryptid community, it's very much, no, it starts with a witness statement.
Yes, like how I see it, especially with folklore, if there's indigenous stories of these cryptids, that's even more indication of these creatures existing. Like if you look at a lot of modern cryptids, like Dogman, Goatman, Snallagasters, things like that, there's no old history of these creatures until like past 100 years or so. So I try to look at the past, especially like Sasquatch. All traditions of Sasquatch go back for thousands of years. And a lot of these cryptids like that seen around the world. The Yeti of the Nepal, the Yowie has been talked about for generations by the Aborigines of Australia. So how can we, okay, that's more likely that the creature will exist. But if, let's just say stories of this creature only started 10 years ago, science doesn't work like that. An animal just doesn't appear out of nowhere, unless it's something maybe paranormal in mind, something like that. Sure. But it's not something physical. Something doesn't evolve out of nothing.
Yeah. Evolution doesn't occur that fast. The branches of the tree do not sprout that quickly. And especially whenever you're talking about Dogman, that is specifically the first part of this conference. It is the idea that, yes, here in America, this is a very young concept. I found it really interesting in the Dogman Triangle movie by Small Town Monsters. They especially Ken Gerard, very much got into the idea that the locals, the people who originated these stories, at least here in Texas, things like that, Germanic upbringing,
yes,
French settlers, things like that. So they brought a tradition from their old country to here.
Their own stories of the Loop Guru and the werewolf from Europe into North America. Like, I really bring this up a lot with the Wendigo, for instance. The Wendigo looked more like a pale humanoid or a rake in Algonquin tradition. But when Americans came over and they started mixing the stories, the Wendigo nowadays looks like a bipedal deer.
Yeah.
But because they have the stories of lycanthropy and being able to change form.
Yeah.
So you have this mixture of cultures causing a new creature pretty much to form out of nowhere.
Yeah, precisely. And very much take root in the fact of, no, this is what it is. And it's like, well, but that's never what it has been.
Yes. It's like when people say they see Wendigo, like, oh, I saw a giant bipedal deer, and it's like, well, no one ever described it like that. How can you see something unless it's your own imagination, or maybe even people bring up ideas of topas and
exactly.
The brain makes what it wants to see. And if, let's just say, the idea like Bigfoot on the brain, you go out looking for Bigfoot, of course you're going to find Bigfoot.
Yeah.
That's kind of the same idea. If you go out looking for a particular creature, of course you're going to expect it to see it. One thing I always tell people is like, if you believe something exists, you'll expect to see it in your reality.
Yeah.
Even if it's not someone else's reality, you'll see it. If you believe in the rake, you'll probably see the rake at some point. If you believe in Bigfoot,
if you believe in UFOs, you may very well see a light in the sky one night.
And be like, oh, that's a UFO.
And we've had the conversation before. I have the conversation regularly on the show, the idea of confirmation of faith, confirmation of belief. I had the big conversation with my friend Will last night in our hotel room about the fact of you will never, ever change the mind of a true believer. I don't care what they are a true believer of, Ryan. They are a diehard true believer. To change that paradigm, it can shake foundations. It can change things, and it's hard when we're living in a society that, in one hand, encourages people to come forward, tell us your story, be open. At the same token, we take those stories and use them in other ways.
Yeah.
Use them either to ridicule people, to say you're crazy, when, I don't know, I'm one of those people, experience is experience.
Yes.
Nobody's had my experiences, and some of them are pretty weird, man. Some of them are pretty out there. I'm open to talk about any of them, but never would I be upset if somebody was like, oh, well, yeah, I don't believe that. Like, it's literally one of those, you had to be there.
Yeah.
Like
that's one thing I've had conversations with Barton Unley. I come at it from research, but Barton's lived it. He's seen these creatures. He's seen Bigfoot.
Absolutely.
And mine and his opinions are very different.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I haven't seen Sasquatch. I haven't lived alongside these creatures.
You have not had the experience yet.
I have to take your perspective into according. Like, okay, you've actually seen these creatures. You've actually lived alongside them. Sykesville Monster, all that stuff. So I'm going to take your opinion over anyone else's because you've actually experienced it. The researcher is like, I'm researching, but I'm not actually seeing it. Well,
and even to take that idea one step further, Ryan, the idea of excluding opinion. Oh, no. That's why would you go to a second doctor ever? You're going for a second opinion.
Yes.
For an opinion, for another educated person's opinion on what a situation is. I'm not educated enough, but I know that this situation is happening in my body. What do you think's going on? Yes. I don't know if that's what's going on. I'm going to go seek a second opinion.
Yes.
And like you're saying, you don't trust a lot of people's opinions, but you trust people like Barton. You trust people who have been out in the field. People like Sibylla.
Yes.
Who have drawn pictures of what people have seen, and it's helped them get over traumas.
Yes.
Things like that. Like that is a different realm of opinion, and yet still important to the scientific endeavor, that opinion.
Yes. Like I was having a conversation earlier with Josh of the YouTube channel What Looks Beneath. And we were talking about how eyewitness accounts and stories and research are very different things in cryptozoology nowadays.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I've noticed, especially in recent years, cryptozoology is going towards the more storytelling. Like Jason McLean said, hey, it seems like to be a cryptozoologist, you need to be a really good storyteller.
Yeah.
And it's like, it makes sense, but at the same time, you can't let stories and eyewitness accounts overtake research. Because, like, for instance, writing books. A lot of people that write books have the research. They have years of, like, eyewitness accounts, and then they put the research into it. But then you have books that are just story, no research, no explanation.
Yeah.
And that's what I've noticed in recent years is people go more for storytelling than actual research. And that's what I'm trying to go after is, like, okay, I have all these stories, but how can I explain these? How can I find correlations? How can I find evidence for it?
That's interesting because I had never really considered the fact, Ryan, and just to loop this conversation right back to the beginning of folklore.
Yeah.
I'd never really considered the fact of us as a humanity making a return to the campfire.
Yes. Like,
very much so. And it had never really dawned on me the fact of, yes, so many of the paranormal things out there have come down to research has waned away.
It's more campfire stories.
And it's become that very tribal aspect of, like if these don't believe, this is our campfire.
Yes.
And these are the stories that we tell around it.
Like how I see it, it's like you got a campfire and you hear a noise in the woods. That's a monster in the woods. You give that story. But how I see it, of course, I like that story, but I want to find out what's in the darkness. What is that?
Well, and
that's the research aspect.
Precisely. And, of course, you've got to be careful. I mean, I can hear my audience right now. Oh, there are unbroken oral traditions for thousands of years. Yes. Go talk to the Aborigines. Yes. However, Aborigines don't just go around telling stories. There is a storyteller who was trained by a storyteller.
Spread to others.
And you learn the story.
Yes.
Like, it's not like I heard this story that my grandfather told. Like, the storyteller learns to tell the story the way it was told.
Yes.
There's
no variation.
There's no variegation to it. There's no difference to it. Like, the way great-grandpa told it is the way it's told because this same person has maintained that unbroken tradition.
Yes. Like, the whole experiment of, like, you have 5 people in a circle, you tell one person to whisper a secret, you get to the end, it's like...
the telephone game.
But if you look at it, look at the Aborigines, the rainbow serpent legends haven't changed for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Because one person's trusted with the knowledge and then passes that on to one person.
Exactly.
And with storytelling, when you pass it to more people, more variation occurs, more changes. It doesn't mean not to share your story, of course. No,
sure, no.
But it says there's going to be variations at the end of the day because other people bring in their own perspectives, your own experiences. Your own experiences affect other people's stories as well.
Well, and that is definitely something that we've even talked about with experiencers and researchers, people who are experiencers that are researchers. The fact that they have to be very careful not to absorb what somebody tells them into their story.
Yes.
Into their experience. And they have to be very, very watchful of that because that can happen in a heartbeat.
Yes.
That can happen in a heartbeat that you adopt something without even realizing.
And how ideas are very transferable and are changed. They adapt. Like how some people like with Sasquatch. A lot of early stories of the Sasquatch, if you look back at it, reference creatures with horns because they saw these creatures as demonic horns. Nowadays, we don't see that. We see people describing them as more gorilla-like. And then in recent years, we see them as more human-like because it's a perspective. It's an idea changing throughout time.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean back then they looked more gorilla-like. No, it's just because of what we know, what we have perspective. Like back in the day when we were called Sasquatch wild men.
Yes.
Before gorillas were found. Then gorillas were discovered, and we started calling them gorillas. It all depends on the perspective and knowledge you already have to what's happening around you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, because it's very much the reality is our filter. Like that is everything that we do in our lives is put through the filter of our experience.
Yes.
So to subtract that from experience is hard.
Yes, like how I always bring up the idea of like people that are colorblind. They might see this as black, but they might see this as brown, gray.
Yeah.
And what says they're wrong? Just because you have a different opinion doesn't mean it's particularly wrong.
Yeah.
Who says what reality truly is?
Oh, sure.
And that's how perspective affects our own reality.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, we were just getting into that with Jason McLean a few minutes ago, the idea that we manifest a lot of things. We manifest a lot of things in the world around us. We even manifest things to the point of full-on having conversations on the way to the conversation, man. Like, how many times are you driving down the road to a job interview, and you're having it like, and even responding to the person, like you are fully building a foundational layer of the wall before you ever made it to the dinner table.
Yes. Yeah.
and we, through our experiences, we have to be careful that we are not making a very good sand foundation to build a wall and to box things off to only our experience, Ryan,
Yes.
and to only looking at things through the lens of our experience.
Yeah, like how I see it, it's like your experiences will affect your own perception. But if you look at research isn't meant to let experience really affect you. It's supposed to be like, okay, where's these stories? What's the research? What's the data? What's the evidence?
Yeah.
And how I see it, with cryptozoology especially, we need to go more towards the research. Because like, storytelling is okay. It's awesome. It's perfect.
There is a definite place for it.
But if you like look at like a lot of authors, some authors write a whole book and it's nothing but stories, no explanation. Some authors like the late Linda Godfrey, she has stories, but then she also explains what the people are seeing, like the indigenous Dogman hypotheses, things like that.
Yeah.
So what I want to see with cryptozoology is a more towards our research, like Josh with What Lurks Beneath. He was talking about like with YouTube. YouTubers are like Darkness Prevails or What Lurks Beneath give stories. They're a lot more successful than the researchers because it also affects emotion.
There's an entertainment value. Dude, when I'm on the road, I listen to classic radio dramas. That's my jam. I love it. It freaked my wife out at MUFON. I was like, do you mind if I listen to... And what's funny is she's a theater major. So you'd think that the idea of like, hey, let's go real black box right now. Yeah. Let's turn off the lights and just listen to a show. And she was not about it. But for me, the fact of being taken somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to see anything. It's going to emotively move me. It's going to get my mind working. There's a reason why podcasting has taken over the morning drive time, Ryan, and why nobody's listening to the Q Morning Zoo with Jimmy and the Bone anymore. Yeah. You know, and why they now have a podcast after their radio show.
Yes.
Because we got to keep you there. We got to keep the stories going. You know, and even if you listen to those shows, most of the time it's what'd you do over the weekend, man? It's storytelling. It's storytelling.
And that's the thing with, like, a lot of people see storytelling as old, but storytelling continues in today. We might not be around a campfire. Oh, yeah. But now we're around a phone. We're around a laptop. We're around a TV. It's the same ideas, but just transversing time and just the medium changes. Yeah. We're no longer hearing it person to person. We're hearing it over a electronic device, but it's still the same ideas. Yeah, precisely. And once again, we are getting our validation as human beings from that. We are getting our validation of thought form. We are getting our validation of faith in certain things from all of that. And you know, that can be a great thing. It can also be a caveat. Yes. Where you know. We need to have some vetting practices. We need to make sure that, you know, a prime example would be Corey Goode. Corey Goode is a really good example. I'm not sure if you're aware of Corey Goode. He is the gentleman who said he was part of the secret space program. Oh, yes. Talked to blue avians, things like that. There are now a whole group of people who have spoken to blue avians, all kinds of things. Yeah. Well, it's come out in a lawsuit that Corey Goode, the blue avians are his meditation guides that he made up. So anybody who says that they were part of the secret space program and met the blue avians, they're delusional. Yes. They're my meditation. Well, at what point did you stop spoon-feeding the delusional people the delusion, Corey, to make a buck? Yes. You know, and that's the thing is amazing storytelling. Amazing storytelling that wrapped people up so much that they believe it themselves.
That they believed that was their own reality.
Yes.
And that's how real it can become. That is exactly how real it can become. And we, even as storytellers, Ryan, like we have a responsibility. We have an accountability. Yes. I look at it as my job. There's 101 people out there that tell stories. There's 101 people that sit around a table and talk about conspiracy theories. My job is to demystify. My job is to sit down with people like Ken Gerard, Lyle Blackburn, and let's demystify this. Let's talk about the science and the myth, how they commingle, and let's get into the depths of it. Because without that, we aren't going to advance the science. It's not going to happen.
Yes. It's just a bunch of storytelling, but there's no depth to it.
Yeah.
It's like having a skim part of like water, but there's no depth. It's a lot there, but there's no depth to it.
Yeah.
So it's like we want that depth, that like explanations, the research behind the stories. The stories are awesome. It's great to have stories, but what's the next step?
Yeah.
How do we find the research from that?
Yeah, precisely. What can we call from that? What data can we call from that? And even the idea of using AI for citing databases. And like, I cannot wait until the day that MUFON lets loose AI on their 50-plus years of sightings.
Yes.
Just to see the trends that we were not able to pick up on.
Yes.
You know? Same thing with these sightings. I guarantee you, if we fed Dogman sightings into some AI, we'd come up with some interesting stuff. There'd be some distinct patterns going on, and I think that is really one of the new tools that we can really, really leverage in a lot of these things to narrow down. Because we've had the conversation before. I'm not going to say Bigfoot can't make a portal. I'm not going to say that there isn't a real Bigfoot. I'm also not going to say that they ain't flying spacecraft. But the question is, well, if you're just talking about a Bigfoot, now we got one unknown quantitative to deal with.
Yes.
If you're talking about Bigfoot coming down out of an alien spacecraft, well, now we got to prove alien spacecraft before we prove Bigfoot.
Yes.
Or do we prove Bigfoot for, like, which part of that do you start tugging on first?
Answer your question with a question.
Yeah.
I like politics. A politician, you ask him a question, they answer a question back. And you're
That's
like,
right.
That wasn't the answer. You just made a question back at me. That's not the answer.
Precisely. It's like you're a teacher or something.
How many kids say, like, oh, well, what about this? I'm like, no, I'm asking for an answer, not a question back. It's good to ask questions.
Yeah.
But answers are more important sometimes than the question. But a lot of times, too, the question shows how much you're thinking. Like, it's like being able to, like they say, to truly master a subject, you need to be able to teach it. If you can ask those questions, then we know truly you've mastered something. You've mastered, like, whatever you're doing.
But you've also, and to build on that and to take it one step backward, it's the fact of you've got to be willing to question everything you know to be true.
Yes.
And you've got to be willing for that paradigm to be destroyed. I unfortunately get a lot of heartache from a lot of people in groups, Ryan, for being called a skeptic.
Yeah.
I will correct people and say I am a capital S skeptic.
Yes.
Because a proper skeptic is fully waiting for the opportunity for my mind to be blown and changed.
Yes. There's a difference.
I'm not there to poke things and say, like, what you believe in ain't real.
Yeah.
Because I believe in it, too. But I have to skeptically look at all of that.
Yes.
Every bit of that.
There's a difference between a skeptic and a non-believer.
Exactly.
Non-believer, like how you said, a true believer cannot be changed. A non-believer truly cannot be changed either.
That's right.
A skeptic,
because they're a believer in non-belief.
Yeah. There's a skeptic is right in between. They can sway to either side.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's show me, and then we'll have the conversation. Because I'm willing to. I am all about the scientific method. Yes. And I think what people have forgotten, Ryan, is that it begins with hypothesis. Everybody always says, I have a theory. Whoa, no.
Hypothesize, then you create the theory.
Because you're allowed to hypothesize any crazy thing you want.
Yes.
It's through experimentation that we prove or disprove the hypothesis, then it becomes a theory. So take it a step back and remember, you are allowed to hypothesize any crazy thing you want in science. Yes. Any crazy thing. The earth is flat. Hypothesis. Now let's start proving.
Yes. I love when the flat earthers do the calculations and they prove it's actually round. And you're like, you just disproved yourself. Good job, buddy.
You just made a sphere.
Yeah. Good job.
But that's just it. We have to be willing to look at things in new lights. We have to be willing to pull things outside of a box.
Yes.
You know, and not even let it live in a box. Like, the minute you put it in a box, it's no different than the scientist who said, it's not in our box, so we don't want to look at it.
Yes.
Like, no different. So, yeah. Tell everybody where they can go to get your copy of Cryptids of the World, where they can go to keep up with all your work, Ryan.
Gotcha. Cryptids of the World, you'll be able to find it on like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, most other places that sells books. You can check out my podcast, Cryptid Chronicles, on YouTube. I haven't uploaded in a while, but I'm planning on uploading pretty soon for you guys. You can also check out my social medias. I have an Instagram. It's linked with my YouTube. I have Facebook. If you look at Brian Edwards on Facebook, you'll be able to find me. Always be open to give me messages, email me, do whatever you guys want to, because I'm always open to talking to eyewitnesses and talking to other fellow researchers.
Absolutely, man. Thanks always for taking the time. Such a busy conference. Great to see so many people here sharing stories, sharing experiences. It's great. While you were online checking out all the amazing work of Ryan Edwards, everybody, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can go to like, follow, subscribe, and share the show. That is where you can go to find our experiencer page, CuriousRealm.com/story. That's also where you can go to CuriousRealm.com/books, or store, rather, and get the books from all of our guests. Stay tuned after these messages, folks. We'll be right back with our continuing coverage of the second annual Dogman and Cryptid Conference right here in White Settlement, Texas, brought to you by the Paranormal Round Table. We'll be right back after this.